Hello, my topic this month is the subject of meetings, and if meetings were a monster before COVID, I think they're probably even worse now because we seem to be defaulting to the so-called meeting when actually a phone call, a walk down the passage, a quick question, a conversation while you make coffee would do better. That's not necessarily the topic of this particular video, but it is one of the things that I've observed post-COVID, and my purpose in discussing meetings with you this month is to help you make sure that your meetings are more effective. Last week I spoke about meetings where you go line by line through reports, and I said that doing that in a meeting is a bit like trying to teach a pig to sing. It is a waste of your time and it irritates the pig. And I have other pet peeves about meetings, some of which I'll address in this video. I have real problems with meetings that don't have a clearly articulated purpose, where the agenda is not absolutely clear. I have real issues with meetings that start late and finish late. I think it's discourteous, and I think that it sanctions all sorts of problematic behaviors in a team. I find it tedious and annoying when people's stories are indulged, and then there's another story, and let me give you an example, and let me give you another example, and because we're all so polite, we indulge these stories when actually we really already get it. Which is a bit like my next peeve, which is about meetings that go down rabbit holes, and we end up talking about topics that have got nothing to do with the subject of the meeting, and it appears that the chairperson hasn't noticed or is uncomfortable with pulling things back, and nobody else pulls it back either. I don't think it's useful to have meetings where one voice dominates and the meeting starts to feel like a lecture, or where certain voices dominate and there are others who are just silent. I think that is poor meeting leadership. It's also poor meeting participation techniques as well. I get annoyed with meetings where we end without a clear sense of who's going to do what and by when, and how we're going to account to one another for what we've committed to. And I especially don't like meetings where action items are carried over and carried over and carried over. But my topic for this meeting is about this. You should never hold a meeting unless you know what result you want out of your meeting. We should not have meetings because we always have meetings on a Tuesday at 10. We should always know what the purpose of the meeting is, and we need to be able to tell the meeting participants what we want to achieve in this meeting. So it starts with a clear purpose. If you are to achieve that objective, you need to know who needs to be involved, because that's another thing that happens with meetings, is the same people always get invited out of habit, out of courtesy, because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. For whatever reason, we're not necessarily asking ourselves, who do we need at this meeting, because they will make a valuable contribution to this topic, and they will contribute to high quality thinking around this topic. So that's your second thing, is now that you know your objective, who are the people you need around that table in order to serve that objective? The third thing that you need is to be clear on what people need to do to prepare. Do they need to read something? Do they need to do some research? Do they need to ponder some questions that need to be answered in the course of your meeting? Do they need to prepare some slides? Do they need to present an analysis? So you need to know what preparation is required in order that your meeting can run over the shortest possible time and tackle your agenda items and finish on time. And the last thing that you need, which will serve all of the above, is a great agenda. Now, for me, the purpose of meetings is threefold. Number one, we need to collectively get our heads around an issue and solve a problem. Number two, we need to make some decisions where collective thinking and collective commitment is important. Or, number three, we need to share information where the meaning might be misconstrued and you need to be able to manage that, or it might have emotional responses and you need to be able to manage those. So when you write your agenda, if the purpose of your meeting is to solve problems or make decisions, then write your agenda in that language. So the purpose of the meeting is to draw up a project plan for XYZ project. When you draw up your agenda might be phrased as determine who will be on the project team. The second one would be decide on the key milestones. The third would be decide who's going to break down each of those milestones into steps. And the fourth one would be agree on the date and time of the next meeting. Do you see how the way that I've put that is we've articulated the decisions that must be taken at each stage of the agenda? So my recommendation to you is when you are preparing for your meeting, decide and write down the purpose of the meeting. Number two, decide who needs to be there. Number three, write your agenda as a series of questions or a series of decisions to be taken. Number four, distribute your agenda with specific requests about the preparation that needs to be done ahead of the meeting. Next week, I'll talk more about meetings. Perhaps I'll talk more about what should happen during the meeting in order to ensure that your meetings are effective. But your starting point is clear objective, clarity about who needs to be there because they contribute to the thinking. We know what the agenda items are, and we all know what we need to do to prepare in order for that meeting to be as effective as possible. I hope this gives you some great ideas.